Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful December the 27th, 2019. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, when you said 27, I thought you was talking about my age at first. Then I started doing the math. I'm more than twice that, so I guess I failed that test and everything. But Charlton, it's exciting. You know, we've gotten through the final, almost the final week of 2019, coming up on a big college bowl weekend. Charlton, everybody's excited in the South.
Everybody's excited except for all the live animals. I think I've consumed my share of animals that gave their heart, mind, and body and soul to our gluttony for the holidays. It's amazing when I meet vegetarians and they give me a lecture like, why do you eat live animals? I said, they're not live when I eat them, except for some of the crab. It's all fair, love, and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors on TV and radio. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, also on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Just make sure you have the app to download those applications. I want to also make sure on this final Friday of 2019, before we get into 2020, it's amazing how time flies, but I still want to make sure we pay homage to our military veterans. National Suicide Hotline, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and they can get some. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, it's important every day of the year, Charlton. As you talk about, we've reached the last Friday of 2019. But unfortunately, in reaching the last Friday, we haven't reached the last suicide in America amongst our great veterans, Charlton. We lose some 20 of them a day to that horrific disease, and we have to find a way to stem the tide. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there to help, to have people to talk to listen to you, to understand the plight and the troubles that you're going through, Charlton, that are non-judgmental. We think so much about what we do as individuals every day in America, Charlton. We have a tendency to forget about those who struggle.
Yeah.
And our ex-military personnel struggle every day, Charlton, for some other various reasons that we will never understand because we haven't been in that position. But we thank them every day for their services to this country. But we stop at that point and don't think about how can we help them beyond thanking them.
Yeah.
The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there to help them, to thank them beyond their active service. When they're in trouble emotionally, financially, when they come back home, Charlton, they need people to guide them through this tough wave that they're going through. And so any way that we as American citizens can lend a hand to help these great veterans that have served our country so admirably. And we talk about giving out the number, but one of the things we, even as us, Charlton, we need to understand that all of these veterans don't have access to a phone.
Yeah.
You speak constantly about seeing people you think may be homeless veterans on the street. They don't have a cellular phone. They don't have the money to make a phone call. So if anybody see a veteran in need and they need somebody to talk to, lend them your phone. Make the call for them to that National Suicide Prevention Hotline number.
That's 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or text 838-255. That's 838-255. There was a study that showed, and I think it was just on television this morning. I was watching some CNN News, and they're saying there's over 130,000 homeless people in California. A lot of them have served for our great country also. So anything that people can do, always say, call that number 800-273-8255, or text 838-255 to get some help. Big C, I know on this beautiful Friday of this, they have this highway in California. It's called Interstate 5, and it runs from the Oregon border all the way, next to the Oregon, but the Canadian border, all the way down to Mexico. It goes through Washington, Oregon, and California. And if people know, it's called the Grapevine. It was closed for 2 days, and it really stalled traffic in California. They were having to reroute people about 100 miles to get over the Grapevine Mountain, which pretty much connects Central California to Southern California. So a lot of people were traveling, and I hope that they get home safely. Just want to make sure people know that too. But I want to get your thoughts on, because 2020 is already here, what are you grateful for the past, say, 2019? And everybody often does that in the new year, but let's do it now, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we can always reach back and people say what they're thankful for. You know, the number one thing that I'm most thankful for, Charlton, is waking up every day. When you wake up every day, that's 99% of the battle of your life.
Yeah.
People think that, you know, what they may be able to accomplish throughout the day, throughout the year. You don't accomplish anything without waking up, Charlton. That is the greatest feat that we can accomplish every day of our lives.
Yeah.
But then I'm thankful for having my family, people that I can count on, that I can depend on, looking at my children, looking at my mother, you know, things like that. So, you know, this is what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for waking up. Any success that I achieve comes from that factor, Charlton, is that I wake up. And so I don't look beyond that as being thankful. That is the most thankful gift that I can get every day.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that thankful for health. Having your health is important. Of course, if you don't wake up, you don't know if you get it or not. That's always something that people think about. And I'm really grateful that I can see people that I care about, and that they're going about life and feeling good about life and hopeful for the future. I remember there's always talk about what people accomplish, and sometimes when you watch the holidays, what I do not like, and I was talking to my mother about it, is we've made Christmas so commercialized that people think that Christmas comes in a box. Like, if you didn't buy me a lot of toys, you don't love me. And that, to me, has become European or Eurocentric when it comes to Christmas. But again, everybody has their own choice and their own opinion. But I'm grateful to have people say, I love you. And that's so important to me, more than what you put in the box. But it's all, everybody has their own right. I do want to say one more thing that I'm grateful for in 2019. Everybody goes through things, and I just want to reach out to all the people that I know that have gone through something and just say, just keep your hope, keep fighting forward, and just keep showing up. And that's about 99% of the battle, too. Just keep showing up. Big C, when it comes to showing up, there are a lot of things that people talk about in the world of college football. And I know we talked over the last, couple of days through the holiday breaks about college bowl games. It seems to never end. I know I was going back to Chris Ault when he started the Division II National Championship back in 1978. Well, it did not exist in 1977. And when he started it, some people said, that's too much football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when we look at these bowl games, Charlton, what is enough? What is the max number? Do you keep adding? Do you keep detracting from it?
Yeah.
And like I said, me growing up, there were 5 bowl games that everybody dealt with. It started on New Year's Eve in Houston, Texas. It ended on New Year's night in Miami, Florida. And you built yourself up for that. You basically had a 20-hour period of football extravaganza.
Yeah.
Is that all of those games meant something. And I think that's something that we lose a little bit of the luster of, is that all the games don't mean anything.
Right.
When you're sitting there, Charlton, and you're looking at teams 5-7, 6-6 in a bowl game, what's the significance of that? I understand you're giving an extra game to the kids, and television is making a little more revenue from its advertising and sponsorship
yeah.
that's going on into the game.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Charlton, when you got a 6-6 team that is going into a bowl game and you rewarded them with this extra game, and then they lose that game, they end up the season 6-7.
Yeah.
You're a sub-500 team, and at the end of the year, what did you really accomplish? And then when you look from a viewership perspective, what does it mean to viewership?
Yep. And there's a game that was played in Hawaii. Hawaii got the best of BYU. But I saw a game last night, just kind of flipping around, seeing some channels. It was Pittsburgh 7-5 versus Eastern Michigan 6-6. The eyeball test, Michigan State, it was Eastern Michigan, looked like they were Michigan State. They had a lot of big players playing on their team. In fact, they looked more imposing than Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh came back and won the game, in the final moments of the game, and had a nice win there in Detroit. So as you were just talking, Eastern Michigan, their season ends at 6 wins, 7 losses, and they were about 30 seconds away from winning their bowl game over in Detroit, Big C. But it was called the Quick Lane Bowl. I guess Quick Lane stands for when you want to get your oil change, you go to the Quick Lane companies, and they'll do your oil change in about 30 minutes or so. But that's the same thing. But what I did see, that it's not really about the record. Those schools get a lot of money for showing up, and as long as money is the caveat, we're going to have expansion of everything. That's why college basketball is expanding also. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what I look at as expansion is I look at saturation.
Yeah.
When I grew up, and one day of the year, Charlton, solely belonged to college football. And we have that in most sports.
Yeah.
College football, just like the NFL owns Sunday now.
Yeah.
College football, for 100 years, Charlton, owned New Year's Day.
Yeah.
New Year's Day was the most significant day in college football. Every year, you could count on it. Just like the sun rising and the clock hitting noon.
Yeah.
You could count on New Year's Day being the most important day in college football.
Yeah.
And now that we look at this bowl playoff series that's going to start tomorrow, Saturday, first game in Atlanta, second game, I believe, is down in
Arizona.
Dallas.
Yeah.
It's not on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
So as you look at the impact of what happens to New Year's Day, look at all the lusters that's lost on there. When you think about the Chick-fil-A Bowl,
yeah,
and the Cotton Bowl, Charlton, these games were synonymous with New Year's Day.
Yep.
And here it is, the biggest games in college football this year, as well as over the last 4 years, Charlton, have not been played on New Year's Day. You take some of the luster away from New Year's Day because you have this playoff bracket. The NCAA and college football is going to need to find a way to bring this playoff bracketing back into New Year's to make it important. This championship game needs to wind up on New Year's. We got all these previous bowl games, Charlton, is being played prior to New Year's.
Yeah.
But the importance of having the national champion crowned on New Year's Day, Charlton, that's the history of college football.
Yeah, and the thing, too, is because money will outrule everything, every logic. It doesn't matter if kids are getting injured. It doesn't matter how many studies we have on CTE. And because the Pop Warner League, all the way up to professional football, there's a waiver you can sign if you want to have your kids play sports, that they could get hurt and you can't sue. That waiver is easily signed by a lot of parents for the Pop Warner and high school leagues, and I'm sure it's also in the contract for college and professional football. But the thing that's changed since the days you were talking about, Big C, people did not have cell phones when you go back to, let's just say, even in the 1980s. They didn't have cell phones in the early 80s. They didn't have text messages. They didn't have a copious amount of streaming where you could watch a game on your tablet. I remember my grandparents always having a transistor radio. And that transistor radio was how they got their information and their news. But what I don't recall is this transistor radio bringing you the game brought to you by the Shell or by the Quick Lane Bowl or by the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, because money talks. That's why we have more bowl games. It's not because people want to see more football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, money is always talk, but you also got to look at the amount of revenue that New Year's Day brought in by itself, Charlton, because all the major sponsors wanted to be a part of that. You look at the revenue that the Super Bowl brings in. That's just one day, Charlton,
yeah.
the amount of money that the Super Bowl brings in. The college football championship is almost equal to the amount of money that the Super Bowl gains, Charlton, when you think about revenue.
Yeah.
So when something is less, that means that it's worth more. When you have an abundance of things, that's like you grow up in California, you live out there. And so when you talk about farmers producing too much crop, it drives down the market value because the market has been oversaturated.
Yeah.
I feel that even with all of these bowl games, that the market is oversaturated, so you devalue the product. You devalue the product of the game, you devalue the product of the advertising. When you limit the number of bowl games, then you have sponsorship willing to pay more. You have television willing to pay more. You look at the where the NFL has gotten to as far as what it charges for its product.
Yeah.
There are 16 games that are going to be played by each team during the regular season. So you basically, and then they put bye weeks in, so you got 17 weeks of football that's being played. The sponsors know that there's a limited opportunity to follow this product and have their product followed on these games.
Yeah.
But with college football being oversaturated where it is, you see every type of sponsorship everywhere.
Yeah.
And so as a fan, you get a little burnt out because you look at a game, you look at the records of the teams, that is this game really worth watching? So is that sponsorship really getting its dollars worth out of it?
Yeah, and I think coming from the southern perspective, maybe you can answer this question. I hear you can't have too much football because it really has replaced religion as what people can identify with. People can run down stats in their favorite team more than they can run down, verses in the Bible, Big C, even down in the Bible Belt. So if you were to cut back on it, and I think a lot of this came from out of the southern immigration, where players were coming from the south, and they opened up integration, and now they could go up to the north, they could go out west and play, they could go all over the country. And because you have athletes that are so driven to become successful in sports, you can have programs that will play football almost year-round now. So I don't see it declining. I don't see us taking away football. However, arena football is over. They closed doors. Now we have the XFL. We've had the Arena League football for about 27 years. Well, it's gone now as the XFL is here. But it's always something replacing something else. USFL football is gone. World Football League is gone. But NFL football continues to thrive. Canadian football has been around over 107 years. So I still don't see any reason for anyone to decline when people keep showing up. Does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, as you look at it and you talk about leagues folding, professional football lost 2 leagues this last year. They lost the Alliance of American Football.
Yeah.
That league folded after 8 games, I believe it was.
Yeah.
You looked at the Arena Football. You talked about it. It closed up shop this year. So that's 2 leagues of football that closed up shop. The reason for that closing up shop, Charlton, because of the oversaturation of football.
Yeah.
And people can only watch so much. You got the XFL coming on. XFL last time out was a gimmick league.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a gimmick league again?
Yeah.
People grow up thinking about something, just like I started out saying that New Year's Day meant college football. It was the sole day of the year that belonged to college football, belonged to parades and college football. Nobody challenged it. Basketball, baseball, hockey, NFL left New Year's Day alone because it belonged to college football.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing now. As we look at the 40-plus bowl games that are being played this year, I can guarantee you at least 5 to 6 of them will be gone next year because they're going to have to sit back and reevaluate, is this really worth it? Is this what we need for content on television? We got a game on. We got a 12,000 attendance in a 70,000-seat stadium. Who is this really appealing to?
Yeah.
The game loses money, even though it's on television. You got sponsorship. It is a loss for sponsors. It's a tax write-off is what it's become.
Yeah.
But really, are the fans interested in seeing a watered-down product over and over? Because then you start to lose interest. I know everybody at some point, well, most of our listeners have gone to a bar. And you can tell when you got a drink that's watered down. And when that drink is watered down, it's not as appealing to you as you're getting one that's a straight shot.
Well, I know you're not.
And the straight shot is top shelf, premium.
Yeah.
That's what we talk about New Year's Day. New Year's Day used to be top shelf when you're at a bar. What they kept up top, not the stuff down in that well where they mix drinks with. You got the straight stuff, a little bit of ice on it.
Yeah.
And that's what New Year's Day to me means about college football. Just like the season, you play the season for it to mean something.
Yeah.
You play the season to win your conference, to get to a bowl game. But when you play your season and you finish 5th in your conference and you still qualify for bowl games, you finish 8th in your conference, you still qualify for bowl games, why did you play so many games just to get to this point?
Well, again, it's money. The players don't get the money. Only the schools get paid. The conferences get paid. If they got to sacrifice a few kids to say, hey, you can go out and play in the Hoo-Yeah Bowl or the Ooh-Yeah Bowl and you don't get any money, but you get a hat, that still gives some of those players who are on the fringe of getting discovered. They think, hey, I got my one more chance to get discovered. How many people watched Eastern Michigan play football last year? I didn't watch them. I didn't even see Michigan State outside of some highlights against Arizona State and then when they played Michigan. But Eastern Michigan's on the team. Even Pittsburgh, the days of Dan Marino and Tony Dorsett, they're gone. Aaron Donald, those days are gone where that program used to be a dominant program. But they're on TV playing a team that finished the season with an under 500 record. That's how, but they got, that conference got paid. The ACC got paid. The administrators got paid. They all got paid. But I do think it could be, diminishing returns. That happens in everything. And there's a story that I heard this morning talking about bowl games. We called it, what's it called, Box Friday, or after this Christmas they call it Box Day, Happy Box Day, when people return over $1 billion of merchandising to stores for things that they don't want or can't fit. Oftentimes they will exchange. But something, you and I talked about this before, how artificial intelligence is in sports now. It's going to replace 35% of the jobs in the next 15 years. Shopping centers all over this country have been closing because of stores like Amazon where people can buy online. So they don't have to pay people $15 an hour, and people can stay online and get the stuff in the comfort of their own home. There were too many shopping malls. Technology changed it. And I think technology is also changing sports, but to the opposite side of the spectrum. Because you can stream everything, Big C. Advertisers don't just pay for people sitting in the seats. They pay for your cell phone when you Google it. If you ever Google something, you'll notice that advertisements start popping up on your phone about what you've been Googling. They're after our cell phones, not people in the seats. That's technology, in my opinion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the technology that I want to watch is that 82-inch TV that's sitting in front of me when I'm sitting down. I have a hard time seeing anything on my cell phone, even in making a phone call.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm old school, and I need to be able to see something that looks like a wall when I'm watching. I want to see something almost life-size.
Right.
I'm not tickled enough to have to watch a game while I'm sitting in my car or sitting at a restaurant where I'm going to put up something on my tube, on my phone screen. And I understand that a lot of people feel that need, but I guess the optometrists will be the one that benefit from that as much as anything. With people sitting there straining their eyes, trying to glimpse down at a 1-inch tall figure on a screen and finding joy from that.
Yeah.
But even though Google and advertising and all that is there, it still comes down to the consumer.
Yeah.
How much is too much for the consumer? And as like I said, when we look at sports, and you talk a lot about high school football, teams playing 16 high school football
games in Texas,
to the benefit of who? Not the student athlete, because if you're good enough to play college ball, it will be proven in 10 games.
Yeah.
It doesn't take 16 games to do that.
Yeah.
And even in college football, it doesn't take a 14, 15 game schedule to prove that you're good enough to play in the NFL. The NFL has said, 16 is the cap on us. We're not exceeding that, but now college football has pushed the envelope to get to that point, as well as high school.
Yeah, there's a thing called geofencing. I learned from some of my tech buddies. I said, what is geofencing? If you go to places like Home Depot or Lowe's or a fast food restaurant or even a bowl game like the Music City Bowl, the Red Box Bowl that's going to be in Santa Clara, companies know that there's something in your cell phone that's always listening, and it targets everything that you Google. So whenever these games are on and we have these fantasy leagues, that hasn't gone down in revenue from the days of Jimmy the Greek Snyder. People are making a lot of money, at least those companies. We have Hulu.com. Hulu does live sports. All of these things are tied into what you do on your phone. They couldn't really care less if you buy a ticket to that stadium because they want the eyes and ears of your consumer habits, and that's what's happening more. And Amazon is the reason why a lot of mom and pop stores are going out of business. And I think even Target, for the first time last year, I believe Target surpassed people buying stuff online as much as going into the stores. And it's happening even more and more. So I don't think it's going to go away because they're after the consumer dollar. But before we get on some NFL football, and I know we have a lot of games that are going on, I just want to get your thoughts one more time on the Final Four. And it's not the Final Four yet because it's like 13 days apart. But the LSU, their contest coming up against Oklahoma, this is a replay of what happened in 2004. LSU won that game 21-14, even though Oklahoma was ranked number 1 and LSU was number 2 in that poll. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the most intriguing part about the LSU-Oklahoma game, Charlton, is that when you look at quarterback Jalen Hurts of Oklahoma, he's never lost to LSU in his college career.
That's right.
And even though this is the first time he's facing LSU not being at Alabama, he's never lost to him.
Wow.
Part 2 of that, Charlton, he's never lost in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. This is his 3rd trip there. He's never lost a game there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of intangibles when you look at this young man coming to this team. He's been embraced by all the players in Oklahoma when he arrived on campus as a grad transfer. This is Lincoln Riley's 3rd trip into the college football playoffs with his 3rd different quarterback. All 3 of those quarterbacks were transfers. 2 are Heisman Trophy winners. 1 was a second runner-up to Heisman Trophy. So he has a lot of confidence about being in the playoffs. What I look for Oklahoma to have any type of advantage over LSU in this game is that Lincoln Riley has to take a page book from his second half last year against Alabama. When they throttled Alabama in the second half down in the Orange Bowl in Miami.
Yeah.
Oklahoma took them to task, but they just played a very flat first half. Great thing for LSU is that they have the Heisman Trophy winner this year.
Yeah.
So Lincoln Riley is now on the opposite page of the Heisman Trophy winner. So does that fall in his favor this time? LSU, their top running back, Robert Alaire, is questionable with a hamstring. I feel that he'll play. He's one of the top receiving backs in the SEC out of the backfield. LSU has 2,000-yard receivers.
Yeah.
We know that Oklahoma's had some vulnerabilities on defense over the past couple of years. Will they be able to correct any of that playing against LSU? But we've seen the vulnerability of LSU in their pass defense, Charlton. They have a rookie freshman cornerback that I feel that Jalen Hurts will try to expose with C.D. Lamb.
Yeah.
He's one of the top receivers in the country. Will that be a mismatch?
That could be a mismatch. Also, Jalen Hurts, when people talk about stats and players, I do the eyeball test also. It's just my opinion. I saw Oklahoma play Texas in the Red River Shootout, and I also saw LSU play Texas. And I think Texas scored almost 40 points on LSU. I think it was 38 points. I believe they lost like 45-38, somewhere in there. And then I saw Oklahoma beat Texas down in the Red River Shootout. I think it was 28-21, but Oklahoma dropped about 2 touchdowns they could have easily scored. They could have had about 40 points. Now, that's against competition that we see on the field. I think Oklahoma's in a better spot than a lot of people think if they learn to run and pass and not try to get into a throwing contest with LSU. You know, LSU, in order to beat them, you're going to have to score about 40 points. That's my opinion. That's why I make LSU just a slight favorite. But there's also something, Big C, that you know it matters in every game. The turnover factor. They know Joe Burrow's going to come out and throw the football. In Oklahoma, they've seen passing quarterbacks over the last decade in the Big 12 Conference. So trying to defend against the past, even if you have a backup player, may not be that much of an adjustment for Oklahoma, but wouldn't it be something? Because the same talk SEC going against the Big 12 happened last year when Texas was going to play Georgia, and Georgia was saying we should have been in the national championship picture, and they thought it was a letdown to go have to play Texas in the Sugar Bowl, and Texas was up 2 touchdowns before Georgia closed the gap. It may be the similar thing here. If Oklahoma can force a couple of turnovers by interceptions, they have as much of a chance to win this game as anybody. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the turnovers, I don't think they'll come by interception. When you look at Joe Burrow, this is a young man who completes 80% of his passes. So him being vulnerable to the turnover, I believe he only had 4 interceptions on the entire season out of 47 touchdown passes that he threw. So that's something, if you're Oklahoma, you can't be hanging your hat on that. I think Oklahoma has to look at trying to have some gadget plays in this game to try to throw off the speed of this LSU defense. They need to toss in some reverses, some halfback passes, Charlton. You're going to have a lot of quarterback draws in this game. Jalen Hurts is going to have to be very active with his legs. They lost Trey Sermon, their top running back, Oklahoma did. They lost 2 other players to suspension on defense, 2 defensive backs, which are going to make them very soft at the back end. And when you look at this passing attack of LSU, That's not their Achilles heel is throwing the ball. That's the plus side of their offense. So Oklahoma is going to have to find a way to get some pressure on Joe Burrow. Otherwise, it's going to be like shooting ducks in a toilet with a shotgun.
We got to get you guys some cable TV down south, Big C. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, I'm going to get Big C's thoughts on the other game with the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Clemson Tigers. We'll take the Big C timeout, and we hope you'll take it with us. All right, we're back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, now on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Just locate the app where you can get on the iHeartRadio podcast. You're following Big C Sports. So when we get into these big football games, I still remember Woody Hayes, who was a Hall of Fame coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He clotheslined a Clemson football player in a bowl game back in the day. I don't think we'll see that kind of shenanigan anymore, Big C. But I think when we think about that, I just can't remember how many coaches have ever done that off the sideline and clothesline a kid. Big C, your thought?
Well, you know, Woody Hayes was at the end of his career, Charlton, emotionally and physically. And that was a very unfortunate day in college football that he hit the linebacker, number 58, after he had intercepted a pass to lock up the game for Clemson in that bowl game. But we see different eras of football and different styles now between these two great universities.
Very well said. So when you have this contest now with Clemson from Death Valley against the Ohio State, where football is big, this is probably, I won't say the only state, but it's a state where college football, at least for Ohio State, is more important than the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. From a fan perspective, they pack almost twice the size. Ohio State, the horseshoe holds about 102,000 or so, and they always outsell the Bengals and also the Browns. But give me your feeling going into this Saturday, what these teams have to do to win. I know we don't predict, but we just give projections. Give me your feeling for this game, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, this is a game that I look at Ohio State, from my perspective, being truly the underdog in this game. Because as powerful as they've been all year long, Charlton, they're coming into this game a little banged up. Justin Fields has been on the gimp with a bad knee, Charlton, the past couple of weeks. He's going to be wearing a brace in this game to get some support on that leg. And so I don't know how effective he's going to be. But I do look at two of Ohio State's last three contests where they struggled. They really struggled against teams that could throw the football, Charlton. They're coming in against one of the best passing quarterbacks in the entire country. And everyone is talking about Ohio State's defensive end, Chase Young.
Yeah.
He's the most dominant player in college football, allegedly. You got to look on the flip side. Clemson has a defensive end, wears number 7. He's just as dominant as Chase Young. So when you think about the offensive tackles at Clemson, they've seen Chase Young every day for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be one of those anomalies that when you look out there, how do you account for Chase Young? They do that every day in practice. But on the flip side, Ohio State, well, since they struggled against teams that can throw the ball, Charlton, you have Trevor Lawrence, one of the most accurate, right behind Joe Burrow quarterbacks in college football. We've seen what this young man has done for the last 2 years when it comes down to big games. We saw him in the playoffs last year as he shredded teams in the playoffs, shredded Notre Dame, Charlton. It was an embarrassment. Then he came back and shredded Alabama. Everyone talked about the vaunted Alabama defense, Charlton. They looked very pedestrian against Trevor Lawrence. So the big game is not too much for Trevor Lawrence. I think it brings out the best in him as a quarterback. And then when you look at this speedster in the backfield, Travis Etienne, this outstanding running back for the University of Clemson, who Dabo Swinney lit a fire under him by midway through the season because he just didn't have the productivity that the coach felt. But ever since then, he's been running like a bat out of hell.
Yeah.
So he's going to be problems for the Ohio State offense. So as people say, the Ohio State Buckeyes are the best team in college football.
Yeah.
There's no doubt they're one of the top four, Charlton. But right now, and since last year's bowl championship game, Charlton, Clemson has been the best team in college football because they have not lost in its last 28 outings.
Except for the loss against North Carolina. But sometimes if you don't show it on video, it's all fair and war. I think if you're Ohio State, watch the North Carolina game and see how a mobile quarterback can give Clemson fits. If you're Clemson, just keep doing what you've been doing. Should be a fabulous game no matter who wins. I'm looking forward to these college football games. And may the best team win. And may the sponsors check, not bounce, because that's why it's always expanding. Big C, we're coming up on NFL football. Can you believe we have not decided who's going to make the playoffs, and we're in Week 17 where teams are playing their 16th game? I want to get Big C's thoughts as we just run down some of the games coming up for NFL football. We have the LA Chargers. They are 5-10 at the Kansas City Chiefs 11-4. It's a Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff, East Coast time on CBS Sports. And Kansas City is a 9-point favorite. I mean, they should be because they're just playing much better football now. Think about this. The Chiefs have 20 interceptions against Phillip Rivers in their past 11 matchups going back to 2014. And they may get another 2 just to say thank you, Bixie. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a game that really means nothing for Kansas City. They locked up the AFC Western Division. Charlton is sorely in the playoffs. They rested players last week in their victory, and will they do the same this week? Will this be this last home game for Phillip Rivers in a Charger uniform?
That might be the case. Also, keep in mind the Chiefs are playing much better football. They're giving up only 9.6 points a game over their current 5-game win streak, which is the best mark in the league in that span since Week 11. If you go back to Week 1 through 10, the Chiefs were giving up to 19th in the league at 24 points per game, so they've really turned things around on the defensive side of the ball, so that gives Kansas City obviously a better chance. And I want to say it's the last time the Chargers will have the indignity, Big C, of playing in a small stadium. They're going to the new 80,000-seat stadium in Inglewood, and I don't know if they'll take their fan base with them, but should be a great game to close out the season for 2019. Big C, the Chicago Bears are 7-8. They're at the Minnesota Vikings that are 10-5, playing a lot better football than people thought they'd play. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports. Minnesota's -1 in that game. And I just want to get your feeling on the Bears have always been the monsters of the midway. They're not going anywhere this year in the playoffs, but the Vikings are. It means a lot if the Bears can at least finish the season at 500, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Bears have been the inconsistent members of the midway is what they've been all year long. But this is a game that Minnesota is supposed to win and should win. The Bears are a sub-500 team. These are the games that the Minnesota Vikings and your cousin, Kirk Cousins, wins at quarterback. If they were above 500, I would give the game to the Bears. But the Bears have struggled. Mitch Trubisky looks a little bewildered. Look like the game right now is moving too fast for the young man. He had a nice 3-game stretch. Then all of a sudden, his last game against the Green Bay Packers, he was who we thought we were. He was. Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah. Well, some things to know about this game also is that the Vikings have yet to lose consecutive games this season, and we saw what Green Bay did to them. Minnesota's lost consecutive home games only once while playing at the beautiful U.S. Bank Stadium. Look for the Vikings to get that win. And they're already a lock-in in the playoffs, too, so I don't see them being really much of a threat to lose that game. The Atlanta Falcons, they decided they're not going to let go of their head coach. Dan Quinn's going to be at the helm. They are going to move a few things around as far as controlling the defense, but the Falcons are 6-9. They've really been playing much better football. They were off to, I think, a 1-7 start. They're 6-9. They're at Tampa, 7-8, and that's a 1 o'clock kickoff East Coast time Sunday on Fox Sports. And Tampa's a 1-point favorite. And in Tampa, this is the team that could have a 10 or 11 win season if Winston had half the interceptions. You think he'll reach 30 on the season, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, he set an NFL record, Charlton, for throwing interceptions. Well, pick-6 returns for touchdown. He has 6 pick-6. This is a game that Atlanta is looking forward to. When you look at Atlanta's defense over the last 5 games, Charlton, they went from worst to first in the NFL on third third down efficiency. So the defense has stepped up, and that's not good news for Jameis Winston, even though he threw 3 touchdowns against them the last time they met in Atlanta, but he also threw 2 interceptions that really hurt his team. So this is a game as hot as Atlanta's been, Charlton. We've seen them with some big victories against NFC West teams.
Yeah.
Can they close out on this hot streak in a division rivalry game against Tampa Bay?
Well, the Falcons have won 3 straight and can knock the Bucs out of the second place in the NFC South. But more important for the Dirty Birds, Big C, Julio Jones needs 84 receiving yards to reach 1,400 on the season. It would be the 6th season of 1,400 plus. That's equaling the great Jerry Rice for the most such campaigns in NFL history. Matt Ryan has to know that. You got to throw Julio. I want Julio targeted at least 15 times. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Julio will get to that number, Charlton, because the receiving core has been depleted. You're without Ridley, you're without Hooper, so they've had to rely much more on Julio Jones during this winning streak.
Yeah, I really look forward. People don't understand how great Julio's been since they went to the Super Bowl. He's continued to catch over 1,000 yards, but the Falcons have not been winning, and that has to be a pain for him because when Jerry Rice was doing that, they were winning and going to Super Bowls. But Julio's a better receiver than Jerry, in my opinion, just on a different type of team. The New Orleans Saints, and this is a team, they got to put last year's playoff out of their mind. If something happens where they get dropped, they can't keep thinking about it. But they're 12-3. They're at the Carolina Panthers that are 5-10. And we know they got rid of their head coach in Carolina, Cam Newton, who had a banged-up shoulder. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports. And the spread is New Orleans is favored by 13 points, and that's a lot, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not a lot when you look at where New Orleans' offense is. Drew Brees is healthy. He has a very strong arm at this latter part of the season. You saw the 3 touchdown passes he threw last week in setting the record, Charlton, for all-time touchdown passes in a career in the NFL. And the defense has been outstanding in New Orleans. Carolina, went through a tough spell, Charlton, after being on a winning streak, and people thought they might be playoff bound under Kyle Allen. But they came back to reality, and you don't want to have to close out the New Orleans while they're on a hot streak. Saints will win by a bunch.
You got to also keep in mind, for the great Christian McCaffrey, get 67 receiving yards, 39 rushing yards. He needs that to become the first player in NFL history to have 1,400 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. That would be amazing because people know he's good, but they don't think about him being that good. Also on the New Orleans side of the ball, the great Michael Thomas, who you think is really the best player in the league as a receiver anyway. He needs 112 receiving yards. He's just 112 shy of 1,800. 1,800 for the season. He'd be only the 5th player in NFL history to reach that mark. Big C, Jerry Rice in 1995. Calvin Johnson in 2012. The great Julio Jones in 2015. And Antonio Brown's also talking to New Orleans. He did it in 2015. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Michael Thomas, Dalton, he's already accomplished something that no other receiver in NFL history has ever done. He has 145 receptions on the season, and he still has a game left to play. So when you talk about the single greatest possession receiver in a season, that's Michael Thomas.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. And now the Saints also, it's possible, they can still clinch a first-round bye with a win and a loss by the 49ers or the Packers. So they're playing for a lot in that game, and I look forward to seeing what happens there. The Miami Dolphins, the only franchise in the NFL to go from start to finish undefeated, Big C, the 72 Dolphins. They're 4-11, and they're a good 4-11 if that makes any sense. They're at the New England Patriots that are 12-3. That's a 1 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports. And the Patriots are favored by 16.5. That's still a lot of points in your own conference, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the Patriots are still a little smitten from that loss that they had against the Dolphins last year, Charlton, that really hurt them down the stretch, even though they went on to win the Super Bowl. But the Patriots, they can't let up. They found some momentum here in the latter part of the season. I like what Brian Flores has done with the Dolphins, Charlton. He's gotten them on track, understanding that they can win. But Bill Belichick, this is his time of the year when he's coaching, and the New England Patriots always get better in December when it's cold.
They always do. Another stat to know, Tom Brady is 15-1 all-time at home against the Dolphins, and is 15-0 when he plays a full game. And so that's something else to keep in mind as they try to stretch the win streak over the beautiful city, at least of Miami. But the Dolphins have been struggling. We know that. The Patriots also, they can clinch the number 2 seed with a win or a Chiefs loss. They won't be seeded any lower than number 3. But they want to get that top spot, Big C. The Dolphins are currently number 5 spot for the 2020 draft. It's a bigger game than New England than just the score, Big C. The Green Bay Packers, America's favorite sports team, maybe, because they're owned by the fans, Big C. They're 12-3. Would you ever think the Packers are 12-3? It just doesn't seem like it. They're like the best 12-3 team right now in the league. They have a really good record, and they're going to move it to 13-3. They're playing at the Detroit Lions, 3-11-1. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports, and the Pack is favored by 12.5 points, Big C. Are you buying it? Your thoughts?
Well, is that the first half spread that they're favored by 12.5 points?
Yeah.
I think Detroit just doesn't have enough offensively to compete with the Green Bay Packers. And with the way Aaron Jones has been running the ball as of late for the Packers, he's the key to that offense. I know everyone wants to say Aaron Rodgers, but the Pack's offense runs through Aaron Jones.
Yeah, well, it runs through Aaron Jones. But think about this, what you just said. Aaron Jones, he will break Ahman Green's single-season franchise record of 20 touchdowns with just 2 scores against the Lions. And if they know that, he might get about 4 touchdowns. Just keep giving him the ball at the goal line. They don't have to give it to Aaron Rodgers. But think about this, too. The Packers being a very kind of a quiet 12-3, they can clinch the number 1 seed in the NFC with a win and a 49ers loss. They'll be the number 2 seed with a win and a 49ers win, or a loss and the Saints loss. But they'll fall to the number 3 seed with a loss and a Saints win. It's just amazing how we haven't even decided what's happening in the NFL, and we have to go down to the last week in the last quarter. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what's great about football, and just like we were talking about college football earlier, that a game be meaningful at the end of the season, that it gets you somewhere. And who would have thought the NFL would have had this many meaningful games the final Sunday of the season? The Green Bay Packers with a chance to be the number 1 seed in the NFL. And with that great defensive end they have, Ladarius Smith, who's been a terror on the quarterbacks the last month of the season. But the Green Bay Packers, if they win and they have games up at Lambeau, all the NFC has to come to there. It's going to be a very tough out to get them out of the playoffs.
I think the last time the Giants went through Lambeau, the Giants did go through Lambeau, and they beat the Green Bay Packers. But it was I think it was 20 degrees or minus 20 degrees. That's a rare thing to do when you can go up there and win when the weather's that bad. It's just great football this time of year. Big C, one of your favorite teams, the Jets, Jets, you and Joe Namath. The Jets are 6-9 at the Buffalo Bills, 10-5. It's a 1 o'clock p.m. kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports. And Buffalo's just favored by 1.5, which seems to me, if you're at home, you're playing against a better team. 1.5 is almost like a Vegas special. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, just like the acronyms on the side of the Jets helmet, just in the season soon means that's what the Jets are looking to do, just in the season.
Yeah.
So the Buffalo Bills are going to dominate the New York Jets in this game. When you think about a very disappointing offense, that's been the New York Jets all year long. The Buffalo Bills need to build some momentum, especially after that loss that they had to New England last week, when they had an opportunity to challenge for the AFC East, Charlton. I don't think that they can come out and take it easy and coast against the New York Jets. They're coming out to put a butt whipping on them.
Yeah, they got to come out and put a butt whipping on them. And think about this, too. Josh Allen, Buffalo's quarterback out of Fireball, California, Cantaloupe Capital, has 9 rushing touchdowns on the season. On Sunday, he'll be seeking to become the 3rd player since the 1970 merger with 20 touchdown passes and 10 rushing touchdowns, Big C, in a single season. The great Cam Newton did it in 2011 and 2015. And then Flash Gordon, Cordell Stewart out of Colorado, did it in 1997 when he was doing his thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Allen's playing a little bit better football than we thought, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you forgot Lamar Jackson in that, Charlton, who eclipsed all of those numbers when you look at the touchdown passes and rushes that he's done this year. But Josh Allen has developed well as a second-year quarterback. He's in that same class with Lamar Jackson, Charlton. And, he's been a diamond in the rough for the Buffalo Bills offense.
He really has, Big C. The Cleveland Browns, they are 6-9. At the Cincinnati Bengals, they are 1-4. So you go to the two pro teams in Ohio, a football capital, and they have 7 wins. Doesn't make any sense. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff, East Coast time, Sunday on Fox Sports. And Cleveland's a 2.5-point dog. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Cleveland Browns, I predicted that they would win 6 games on the season before the NFL season started. And I think they might prove me wrong, Charles. At least they have an opportunity to prove me wrong. But, this is a team that's emotionally distraught when you look at the Cleveland Browns. This is a team without direction. And not, you can't just blame it on the head coach,
right,
Freddie Kitchens, because he's a grown man that he's trying to coach, that all have attitudes and other things that they're trying to accomplish, whether it's through their social media or however they're trying to get there through advertising campaigns that they work on.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Browns' focus this year has not been on football. And this is the final game of the season, and I still don't think that it's on football. People talk about wholesale changes, get rid of the coach, that the coach, this job was too big for him. I don't think the job was too big for Freddie Kitchens. I think the egos are too big for anybody that's coaching this team. It starts with management. You cannot keep the recipe together in Cleveland that you have, but the problem is not the head coach in his first year.
No, it's not the head coach in his first year, but I think sometimes if you use a microscope, you can identify the problem. A stat to know, Nick Chubb, he leads the NFL 1,453 yards rushing this season on a bad team. If he holds the spot, he would be the first Cleveland Browns player to lead the league in rushing since Leroy Kelly in 1968, and with 47 more rushing yards, Chubb would reach 1,500 for the season, joining the great Jim Brown that did it 3 times as the only player in franchise history to hit that number in a single season. And for most of the year, they forgot he was running the ball. See your thoughts.
Well, the difference between Nick Chubb and Jim Brown did that during 12-game seasons. The NFL at that time only played 12 games in a season. So when you think about how astonishing the rushing yards are that Jim Brown had in his career,
amazing.
Think that he had a lot fewer games than the modern-day running back.
Yeah, he sure did. And this is the 5th time in the 5th season that the Cleveland Browns have been a road favorite, so more than in his previous 10 seasons combined. The Houston Texans 8-7 the Tennessee Titans 8-7 at the Houston Texans 10-5. That's a 4:25 p.m. kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports. And Tennessee's 3.5-point getting the favorite in that one. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, the Houston Texans got to look at this like war. When you have an opportunity to eliminate your enemy so you don't have to see them again, this is what the Houston Texans need to do, because if you give the Tennessee Titans some life in this game and allow them to make the playoffs, you potentially have to see them again. And if you have to see them again with Derrick Henry running the football, it can be a huge disadvantage for your defense. They can wear you down. So the Houston Texans, I know Dan O'Brien, to me, has been the Achilles heels of this team, the head coach.
Yeah.
I don't think that he fits the offensive players that they have to put them in their best position to win. But Houston Texans should win this game.
You keep in mind, too, you mentioned about Derrick Henry. If he rushes for over 100 yards, this team is 5-0 on the season when he has 100-plus rushing yards. They are 3-6 when he doesn't have that many yards, so they just got to feed him the ball. And Houston doesn't like they don't like when they're winning a lot. After a win, they usually find a loss. In fact, they really were outplayed against Tampa Bay, but Jameis Winston forgot what team he should throw the ball to, and that's what happened to them. So we'll see good football in that. Pittsburgh Steelers, they're 8-7 at the Baltimore Ravens, who will be resting everybody, it seems. They're 13-2. It's a 4:25 p.m. East Coast time kickoff on CBS Sports. And Pittsburgh is favored by 2 because if Harbaugh's smart, rest everybody. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but if he's smart, how smart is he? I remember this picture being played out a couple of short years ago, Charlton, when the Dallas Cowboys had the best record in the NFC at 13-3 with Dak Prescott playing quarterback. They decided to rest everybody as well as their quarterback.
Yeah.
What happened? They ran into a red-hot Green Bay Packers team in the playoffs. Next thing you know, it took 30 minutes for Dallas to figure out that they were in a ball game, but by that time they were so far behind, even with the firepower of their offense with Prescott and Elliott, they could not come back and catch the Green Bay Packers. Will that same thing be the fate of the Baltimore Ravens sitting down all those players? It's hard to start a locomotive to get it up to full speed once it's been sitting cold on the track.
That's very true. For the Steelers, they can clinch the AFC's number 6 seed with a lot of things that have to happen in front of them. We'll just see what happens with that. In the final 7 minutes, Big C, the Arizona Cardinals 5-9-1 at the LA Rams 8-7. It's a 4:25 kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports, and the Rams are favored by 7. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Rams, got off to a late start. This is one of those teams, Charlton, that has all the offensive tools that you expect to have from a contender in the NFL. This is a team that's going to have double-digit wins this season and not make the playoffs after being in the Super Bowl last year. But the Rams will learn from their mistakes that they had early in the season when their quarterback, Jared Goff, got out to a slow start.
Yep.
Todd Gurley just wasn't up to his ability of running the football. But the Rams will close out the season on a strong note, getting a final victory of the season.
Prediction, Kenyon Drake will go for over 250 all-purpose yards. That guy can run the football. Really appreciate the way he's playing. Kyler Murray will play much better next year. One of the biggest games in the universe. The Washington Redskins 3-12 at the Dallas Cowboys 7-8. Jerry Jones, I think they drink martinis down South Big C. It's a 4:25 kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports. And Dallas is favored by 11, but they'll have their eye on another game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Case Keenum should get the start for Washington in this game. Charlton, Dwayne Haskins was carted off the field last week, so I don't think they'll put the rookie at jeopardy. Charlton bringing him out for a meaningless game for the organization. Dallas desperately needs this game in a dominant fashion. They need to go out and put their stamp on the Washington Redskins to try to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, Amari Cooper's averaged just 6.8 catches for 111 yards at home on Sunday. He'll have to catch about for 120 yards. They just got to show that they're willing to play better. If they are better, we'll find out. Big C, the Indianapolis Colts 7-8 at the Jacksonville Jaguars 5-10. That's a 4:25 East Coast time kickoff on CBS Sports. And Indianapolis is favored by 3.5. Your thoughts?
Two of the most disappointing teams in the professional ranks this year, Charlton. When you think about the big splash that the Jaguars did in the offseason, going out signing Nick Foles to that big 3-year free agent contract. You think about the Indianapolis Colts, where they were in the playoffs last year playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and things just didn't work out for them at the start of the season with Andrew Luck retiring. Jacoby Brissett got off to a hot start, but he's been very mediocre lately. The Jacksonville Jaguars have benched Nick Foles, and he's on the trading block, and they're going to go with Gunnar Minshew the rest of this year and next year.
Yeah, he could be Gunnar Minshew, the first quarterback for the Jaguars to throw for 3,000 yards in his rookie season. He has 2,976 yards right now. The Eagles 8-7 at the New York Giants 4-11. I would hope they would put Jones on the bench to bring back Eli, but Eli's at 500 when the win-loss column. But Dallas is watching this game as much as they are their own game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a game that the Eagles can be vulnerable. When you look at the games that Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley had last week, setting a couple of rookie records in the NFL with Daniel Jones equaling the NFL rookie record, and then Saquon Barkley having over 270 yards in total offense in that game last week. The Giants played well, and that's been an Achilles heel of the Eagles. They don't have any receivers, and they've had trouble in the secondary. And when Daniel Jones can torch you for 5 touchdowns, he may be able to get 3 or 4 against the Eagles. And so if they can't get pressure on him and get him on the ground, they're going to be a big problem for the Eagles, and they could knock them out of the playoffs.
Isn't that something? I still think it would be better for the sports universe if Jerry Jones is holding the press conference after the Cowboys win the NFC East. Big C, the Oakland Raiders 7-8. The last time I can say this, Oakland Raiders, they're at the Denver Broncos 6-9. It's a 4:25 kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports, and Denver's favored by 3.5 over the Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this has been a titanic improvement this year for the Raiders when you think of the potential that they could finish the season 8-8, a 500 ball club where everybody laughed at them at the beginning of the season, even us. Charlton talking about how dismal this organization was. John Gruden proved a lot of us wrong with some moves that he made offensively and defensively, and even getting rid of players. But the Denver Broncos have found a little life in the latter part of the season with Drew Lock, their second-round draft pick at quarterback. He has played well at times, but the inconsistency may hurt him in this game. Can Derek Carr stay with the Raiders with the move to Las Vegas? This game will make a difference.
This game will make a difference, and also for the great Derek Carr. He's completed 83% of his passes versus the Denver Broncos, so this guy can play well. I still don't know if the Raiders have enough to get into the playoffs. Too many things have to fall. The biggest game of the day, at least on the West Coast, outside of the Philadelphia game and the Dallas game, you have the 49ers. They're 12-3 at the Seattle Seahawks, 11-4. Beast mode is back, but will they give them the ball more than 10 times? It's an 8:20 p.m. kickoff East Coast time on NBC Sports. The 49ers are favored by 3.5 in front of the 12th man, up in Puget Sound, where the crowd can be deafening. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, realistically, I like the 49ers in this game where the Seahawks are. Their running game is going to be troublesome for the Seahawks. They haven't had a pass rush. If you remember in that first game against the 49ers, the Javian Clowney made all the difference on defense, putting consistent pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo. Even though the 49ers haven't had much of a defensive pass rush in the last 5 weeks, Charlton, they have played games that reminded me of the Seattle Seahawks in the first half of the season, coming down to the last possession. The 49ers offense hasn't been as sparkling as it should be. Neither team is playing great. They're both limping into the playoffs, even though they have tremendous records for the overall season.
Yeah.
But I see both of these teams with a lot of vulnerabilities and potentially first-round outs in the playoffs.
You look at the 49ers, they would clinch the NFC West if they win this game. Otherwise, if they lose, they're going to become a number 5 seed. But when you think about the oldest coach in the NFL, under Pete Carroll, Seattle is 9-1 against the spread outright at home against the 49ers. It's playoffs happening right now, and we always love playoffs. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, also Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C. What are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking forward to the college football this weekend, but I go back to the point that I opened up the show with. The thing that I'm disappointed about, the biggest day in college football this year is not on New Year's Day, but I'm looking forward to the 2 playoff games on Saturday.
I'm looking forward to it, too. I'm looking forward to being healthy, wealthy, and wise, and you can, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.